everyone. So I'm going to attempt to give you a little bit of background on how social networking has evolved over the past few years. Sometimes it's hard to imagine the days when you can't just take a picture and share it with all your friends, or type in somebody's name and be able to find them online. But things have changed dramatically. In order to kind of take a look at it, we're going to have to go back into the stone ages of the internet, which was 2003 when we first created MySpace. So let's take a look at some of the top sites in 2003. A lot different than what you see now. Looks like people were probably checking the news, checking their email, searching, and checking the weather. What's so interesting about these sites is all of the content was created by an editorial department at these companies. Not one of them, except for maybe eBay, has user-generated content that creates the site by the users. So let's start when we were first building MySpace, some of the things that we had to think about back in 2003. We knew that we had to invent some new technology in order to be able to do this, because for the first time, people were contributing massive amounts of information to us. Things like pictures, things like videos, things like their favorite place to eat, anything you can imagine. This had never been done before. So we were creating brand new technology, brand new software that had to take as much information as we could possibly handle. We had to think about how we were going to get users. You can have the best product in the world, but it doesn't guarantee that anybody's going to use it. So luckily, we were in Los Angeles. We could tap into our network of influencers, artists, good-looking people, good-looking women, never hurts. Then once you get the users, you have to keep the users. You have to make sure your site is engaging. We did a lot to try to educate people on how you use a social network. When people go on to MySpace, for example, for the first time, and they'd never heard of the concept of creating a network, how are they going to know what it is? So we came up with the idea of having someone be everyone's first friend. Some of you might be familiar with Tom, one of my partners. It gave people the opportunity to click on Tom, see what a network's like, see that there's friends attached to him, see that there's comments that can be made on this profile. So education was very important for keeping those users. And in the process, we made the most famous guy on the internet. So I'm going to go through a little timeline in terms of users, of some of the things that we did that made MySpace really special, but some of the things now have changed and actually ended up hurting MySpace. So at about 500,000 users, there was this race to build a network. People loved the concept of friending somebody. But what did that mean to friend somebody? Well, sometimes it was someone that you knew, sometimes it was your family, some of your best friends, but other times it was just you wanted to build a big network in order to be able to broadcast and reach as many people as possible. This is called a symmetric network, which is very important because when I'm your friend, you're also my friend. This is the concept that MySpace and Facebook uses. But if you want to broadcast to people, why not create an asymmetric network? Something where I can have as many people following me or friending me, but I don't necessarily have to be their friend. This is kind of the evolution of the concept of MySpace, where there's this race to build a huge network of people, and the way that Facebook is now a trusted network and Twitter is now your broadcast platform. So at 1 million users, we realized we need to figure out how people are using this site in terms of identity. They're giving us a lot of personal information about themselves, but what kind of information is this? Well, we built MySpace to be a platform to express yourself, to do whatever you want. We wanted you to be creative. We wanted you to customize your profiles, put videos and music on it. And sometimes people would, on their MySpace page, they would have this online identity, which wasn't necessarily their offline identity, which is great. It was a platform to be creative. But for example, they weren't always encouraged to put their real names. So even if I know who you are, you're my best friend, and you didn't put your real name, you can't even search for somebody. We didn't even have your real name. So over time, as the networks grew and MySpace grew, it became actually more difficult to find people. On the other end of the spectrum, you had Facebook, which is a completely trusted network. You usually only allow people to be your friend if they really are your friend and you've met them. So real names were very critical in how people use social networks. At 20 million users, we got an offer to sell the company. This was 2 years after we started MySpace, and they made us an offer we really couldn't refuse. This was really kind of the era that we were recovering from the first .com bubble that we saw in that video. And we decided to sell. It was a tough decision, but we were also able to continue to run MySpace. So we continued to run MySpace inside of News Corp for years. News Corp is a fantastic company. We had huge access to capital. We were able to expand in many dozens of international markets. But we did have some new goals. And to try to explain what those new goals were, I prepared a very special slide here. So I'm kind of kidding, but there comes a time in the evolution of every company when you need to figure out how you're going to make money. And that became the focus. Now, we were part of a public company, so you have to be able to report some kind of earnings, and you have to be able to show some profit. So our monetization strategy was using advertising. It was very successful. We had some of the top brands in the world advertising with us. We were advertising record releases. We were advertising new movie premieres. It was very, very successful. But when you use that strategy, you're very dependent on page views. Every time someone looks at a page, you're serving an ad. So there was new technologies, things like Ajax, a browser technology that allows you to save page views for certain actions. We couldn't always adopt things like that because when you make the user experience more efficient, you also lose revenue. And losing revenue is never great with a public company. So we were operating at a very large scale. 2 years after we sold the company, we were the most trafficked site in the United States, which is very exciting. We had almost 2,000 people in countries all over the world. So when you're operating at that scale, there's lots of things you need to figure out how to scale. First of all, just managing all the people in different countries. And when you're growing that fast, it can be very difficult. You have a huge amount of resources, but then you have things like formal process that can make you move slow. Also, when you're operating at that scale, you're dealing with huge technical challenges. Some of the stats that we had during these peaks, we had 250,000 new users sign up every single day. This required distributed databases that could handle this load, handle all these new identities being put into the system. We had literally billions of images from people uploading pictures, putting on their profile pictures. This required very special technology to get files as close to the users as possible. If people were uploading images in Colombia, we wanted to try to have servers as close to Colombia as possible to make it serve fast. We were getting 3 million new images a day. Facebook probably gets 10 times that a day now. We had audio and video files that are very large format files that we were serving. 40 million comments a day. One of the most interesting stats that I like to use is the number of concurrent users. So at any one time, there's 4 million people clicking on the site. That meant thousands and thousands of servers that needed to support that peak load. And as a result, we created a whole new generation. People now understood the concept of socializing online. We had a snapshot of really everyone, but a lot of influencers, a lot of trendsetters. It was really an era when people started to think about the internet in a different way, not just to check the weather and read the news. So where are we today? Social networking is dominated by Facebook and Twitter right now. Facebook is really, by far the biggest social networking site today. MySpace has seen better days. It's still a very large site. It's probably going to be sold by News Corp, and hopefully we'll see a rebound from it sometime soon. And today, social networking technology is ubiquitous. We use it on our phones. It's now being baked into other applications like social games. And we're going to see it integrated into a lot more applications in the coming years. So I'll leave you with a final thought. We've always had social networks. You've always had your friends. You've always had family. You've always had your coworkers. But now we're using new technology to be able to describe what those social networks are. And with that technology, now we can use it in a different way. So I think we're moving from the era where what can I do now to the era of what can we do together. Thank you.